Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the grand chamber and waited for the laughter to stop. The circular hall stretched upward for hundreds of meters, its walls lined with floating platforms where representatives of the 12 elder species looked down at her, literally looked down. The architects of the Galactic Council had designed this room to remind younger species of their place. Humanity's platform hovered at the lowest level, barely above the polished floor. Elena kept her expression neutral as Councillor Zethric of the Vorati Hegemon finished his statement. His four eyes gleamed with amusement, and his translated words still echoed through the chamber. "The human petition for full membership is noted," Zethric said, "and denied. Perhaps in another century, when your species has demonstrated sufficient maturity." More laughter rippled through the chamber. The Kethmari delegation clicked their mandibles in their version of mockery. The Orvani ambassador's tentacles writhed with obvious contempt. Elena had expected this. 50 years ago, humanity had made first contact with the galactic community. 50 years of careful diplomacy, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. 50 years of being patted on the head and told to be patient. 50 years of watching the elder species divide the galaxy among themselves, while humans remained confined to their single solar system. "Councillor Zethric," Elena said, her voice calm, "may I ask what criteria humanity has failed to meet?" Zethric waved one of his forearms dismissively. "You lack the population base. Your technological development remains primitive by our standards. Your military capacity is negligible. Your species has contributed nothing of significance to galactic advancement." "I see." Elena glanced at her datapad. "Our population now exceeds 30 billion across our system. Our technological growth rate has exceeded the galactic average for 3 consecutive decades. Our trade contributions have increased by 400% since..." "Numbers on a screen," interrupted Councillor Vethan of the Luminari Collective. Her crystalline form pulsed with soft blue light. "We do not measure worth in statistics alone, Ambassador. We measure it in demonstrated capability, in proven strength, in the ability to defend one's own territory without depending on others." Elena nodded slowly. "And you believe humanity lacks this capability?" "We know humanity lacks this capability." Zethric leaned forward on his platform. "Your entire defensive fleet consists of what? 40 patrol vessels? 50? The Vorati maintain 40,000 warships. The Kethmari have 30,000. Even the youngest of the elder species commands fleets that would overwhelm your entire civilization. In a matter of days, you are soft creatures," added the Orvani ambassador, his translation device rendering his burbling speech into flat words. "Short-lived, fragile, your bones break easily. Your skin offers no protection. You cannot survive in vacuum, in extreme temperatures, in high radiation environments. Evolution did not prepare your species for the harsh realities of the galaxy." Elena remained silent. She had heard all of this before. Every human who ventured beyond Sol system heard it eventually. The elder species had decided long ago what humanity was, and nothing would change their minds. Nothing except the truth. And the truth was not yet ready to be revealed. "The council has voted," announced the session moderator, an ancient Veluxi whose scales had faded to pale gray. "Humanity's petition for full membership is tabled indefinitely. The session is concluded." Elena bowed formally, exactly as diplomatic protocol required. She turned and walked toward the exit portal, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Behind her, she could hear the elder species already moving on to other business. Humanity's petition had been a minor distraction, nothing more. Her attaché, Commander David Chen, fell into step beside her as she entered the corridor. He was a compact man with sharp eyes, officially listed as a diplomatic aide. In reality, he was military intelligence, one of the very few who knew the full scope of what humanity had built in secret. "That went about as expected," David said quietly. "They see what they wanted to see." Elena kept walking, her pace steady. 50 years of carefully managed information. 50 years of showing them only what we wanted them to see. They think they know us. Do you ever feel guilty about the deception? Elena considered the question. Ahead of them, a group of Kethmari diplomats passed by, their insectoid bodies towering over the two humans. The aliens did not acknowledge them. Humans were beneath notice. I feel guilty about the necessity, she finally said. When we first made contact, we were genuinely weak, genuinely primitive by their standards. We had two choices. We could accept their protection and become a dependent species, the way so many others have. Or we could buy time, and we bought time. Yes, we let them think we were struggling to master basic interstellar technology, while we actually focused on other things they never thought to look for. They reached the human delegation's quarters, a modest suite on one of the station's lower levels. Elena sealed the door behind them and activated the privacy field. Only then did she allow herself to relax slightly. The Admiralty is not going to be happy about this result, David said. The Admiralty knew this would happen. We all knew. Elena moved to the window, looking out at the stars. The petition was never meant to succeed. It was meant to maintain the illusion, to keep them thinking we still care about their approval. Her communicator chimed. She glanced at the identification code and felt her stomach tighten. It was a priority signal from Earth Command, using encryption protocols reserved for the most serious situations. Ambassador Vasquez, said the voice on the other end. It was Admiral Concuil himself, commander of the United Earth Defense Force. We have a situation. Go ahead. Admiral, approximately 3 hours ago, a massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Council space. Over 10,000 warships. They've been identified as the Kethvoran Dominion. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. The Kethvoran? That's impossible. They were destroyed 3,000 years ago. Apparently not. They've been rebuilding somewhere beyond the galactic rim. And they've come back for what they consider their territory. Admiral Okonkwo paused. Which is everything. David had moved to Elena's side, close enough to hear the conversation. His expression had gone hard. What are they demanding? Elena asked. Unconditional surrender from all species within Council space. They've given a deadline of 72 hours. After that, they begin systematic conquest. Another pause. Ambassador, they've already announced their first target. They scanned Council records to identify the weakest species in the region. Elena closed her eyes. She already knew what he was going to say. They're coming for Earth, Admiral Okonkwo confirmed. They've dispatched a vanguard fleet of 200 warships. At their current speed, they'll reach Sol System in approximately 40 hours. 200 ships to conquer humanity, Elena said quietly. They think it will be easy. The Council thinks so too. We've already received messages from several elder species expressing their condolences for our upcoming destruction. The Admiral's voice carried a hint of dark amusement. Councillor Zethric himself sent a note suggesting that humanity might want to consider evacuation, though he doubted we had the ships for it. Elena opened her eyes. Through the window, she could see several Council vessels moving past the station. The elder species were already preparing their own defenses, pulling their fleets back to protect their home systems. None of them were coming to help humanity. Admiral, she said, what are your orders? For 50 years, we've hidden what we really are. We've played the part of the weak, harmless species that everyone could ignore. Admiral Okonkwo's voice hardened. That ends now. The Kethvoran want to make an example of humanity. They want to show the galaxy what happens to species that don't surrender. And instead, we're going to show the galaxy what humanity has been building while everyone was busy laughing at. U.S. Ambassador, I need you to remain at the Council station. When this is over, we're going to need a diplomat who can handle the aftermath. Understood? Admiral, Elena looked at David, who nodded grimly. Give them hell. That's exactly the plan. The communication ended. Elena stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything that had just changed. For 50 years, humanity had been waiting for this moment. Not this specific threat, but a moment when the mask would have to come off. A moment when the galaxy would learn the truth. She walked back to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 200 Kethvoran warships were racing toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming power. They had read the reports. They had seen the data. They knew that humanity possessed only a handful of outdated patrol vessels and a primitive orbital defense network. They knew nothing. The elder species of the Council had made the same mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen what they expected to see. A young species, a weak species, A species that would never amount to anything significant. They had never bothered to look deeper. They had never wondered why humanity's technological progress seemed so slow and uneven. They had never questioned why human trade ships used engines that were supposedly barely functional, while somehow maintaining perfect schedules. They had never investigated why Fleet Commander Verkin stood on the bridge of the Kethvoran warship Eternal Conquest and watched the tiny blue planet grow larger on the view screen. Around him, his officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. This was a routine operation, nothing more. 200 warships against a species with barely 50 patrol vessels. The mathematics were so simple that Verkin had delegated tactical planning to his junior officers. There was no need to waste his personal attention on such a minor conquest. "Commander," reported his sensor officer, "we are detecting energy signatures from the planet's orbital space. Approximately 43 small vessels. Configuration matches human patrol craft. 43, Verkin repeated. He allowed himself a small expression of amusement. They are sending their entire fleet to meet us. How touching. Should we adjust our formation, Commander? Why would we? Launch fighters when we reach optimal range. The main fleet will continue to the planet. I want orbital bombardment to begin within 2 hours. Verkin turned away from the view screen. He had conquered 17 species during his career. Some had fought hard. Some had surrendered immediately. None had survived. The humans would be no different. According to Council records, they were a soft, fragile species that had barely mastered interstellar travel. Their weapons were primitive. Their ships were slow. Their military doctrine was defensive rather than aggressive. They were prey, nothing more. His communications officer suddenly straightened at her station. "Commander, I'm receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. A woman with dark skin and gray hair, wearing a uniform that Verkin did not recognize from any Council database. Her expression was calm, almost pleasant. "Kethvoran Fleet," she said. "This is Admiral Sarah Concuil of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered human sovereign space without authorization. You have 45 minutes to reverse course and withdraw. This is your only warning." Verkin stared at the screen. Then he began to laugh. His officers joined him, filling the bridge with the harsh sound of Kethvoran amusement. "Human Admiral," Verkin said, "you have 43 patrol ships. I have 100 warships. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your engines cannot outrun our fighters. You have no allies coming to help you. The Council has already written your species off as a loss." The human woman did not react to his words. Her expression remained unchanged. "You have 44 minutes now," she said. "I suggest you use them wisely." The transmission ended. Verkin shook his head. These humans were even more foolish than he had expected. Perhaps their species simply could not comprehend the reality of their situation. Perhaps they thought their bluff would somehow work. It did not matter. In 2 hours, their planet would be burning. The fleet continued forward. 30 minutes later, Verkin's sensor officer spoke again. Her voice was different this time, confused. "Commander, I'm detecting additional energy signatures. More patrol ships." "No, Commander. These signatures are different, much larger, and there are many more of them." She worked at her console, her movements becoming increasingly frantic. "Commander, I'm counting over 300 vessels emerging from behind the planet's moon." "No, wait, 500, 700. Verkin moved to the sensor station and looked at the display himself. What he saw made no sense. "That's impossible," he said. "Council records show humans have 50 ships at most. Over 1,000 vessels now, Commander. Still counting. They're also emerging from the asteroid belt, from the gas giant's moons, from coordinates that showed nothing on our initial scans." The officer looked up at him with fear in her eyes. "Commander, these ships are larger than ours. Much larger." On the main view screen, the peaceful starfield was changing. Points of light were appearing everywhere, spreading across the darkness like a disease. Human ships, thousands of them. Ships that had been hidden, waiting, invisible to every skin the Kethvoran had performed. 2,000 vessels confirmed, the sensor officer reported. 3,000. "Commander, they're still appearing." Verkin's hands gripped the edge of the console. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. The humans were supposed to be weak. The humans were supposed to be primitive. The Council had assured everyone that humanity was not a threat. The Council had been wrong. All ships, defensive formation. Verkan shouted, "Launch all fighters. Prepare for combat." But it was already too late. The human fleet did not wait for the Kethvoran to organize themselves. They struck first, and they struck with weapons that Verkan had never seen before. Beams of energy that cut through Kethvoran shields like they were not there. Missiles that moved faster than any defense system could track. Ships that maneuvered with impossible speed and precision. In the first 60 seconds, 40 Kethvoran warships were destroyed. "Return fire," Verkan screamed. "All weapons, target the nearest enemy vessels." His ships responded. Thousands of weapons lit up the void. The concentrated firepower of 200 warships pouring toward the human fleet. It should have been devastating. It should have torn through any enemy formation. The human ships simply moved aside. They dodged the incoming fire with casual grace, as if the Kethvoran weapons were moving in slow motion. And they kept firing back. They kept destroying. Verkan watched the tactical display as red icons representing his ships vanished one after another. 60 ships gone, 80, 100. The battle had lasted less than 5 minutes, and half his fleet was already dead. "Commander, we're receiving distress signals from the Righteous Fury. They've been boarded." Boarded? Verkan could not believe what he was hearing. "How? We're in space combat." The answer came in fragments from the dying ship's final transmission. Human soldiers in powered armor had cut through the hull and entered the vessel. They moved through the corridors with terrifying speed, their weapons cutting down Kethvoran warriors as if they were unarmed civilians. The ship had been captured in less than 3 minutes. This was not possible. Humans were soft. Humans were fragile. Humans could not survive in vacuum. Humans could not possibly have developed this level of military technology while hiding it from the entire galaxy for 50 years. And yet they had. "Commander," his communications officer was almost screaming now. "Multiple ships reporting critical damage. We've lost contact with the entire left wing. The humans are targeting our command vessels." Verkan made a decision. It was not a proud decision. It was not a decision befitting a fleet commander with 17 conquests to his name. But it was the only decision that might save even a portion of his fleet. "All ships, retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace, now." The surviving Kethvoran vessels turned and ran. They fled from the human fleet as fast as their engines could carry them. And some of them even managed to escape. When the final count was complete, 37 ships out of 200 made the jump to safety. Verkan was among them. He sat alone in his quarters as the Eternal Conquest limped through hyperspace, heading back to the main fleet. On his personal screen, he watched the recordings that his ship's sensors had captured. He watched human warships tear his fleet apart. He watched human soldiers board and capture Kethvoran vessels with brutal efficiency. He watched the complete and total destruction of everything he had brought to conquer a species that everyone said was weak. The humans had been waiting. They had known the Kethvoran were coming, and they had prepared a trap so perfect that Verkan had walked right into it, without the slightest suspicion. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the final transmission that the human admiral had sent. As the remnants of his fleet fled, she had appeared on screen one more time, still calm, still pleasant, as if the battle had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Run home to your masters," she had said. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them what you saw. And tell them that if they come for Earth again, we won't let any of you escape." Verkan thought about those words as he prepared his report. He thought about the fleet commander who would receive it, and the leadership council that would hear it after that. He thought about how they would react to the news that a species everyone had dismissed as irrelevant had just destroyed 163 Kethvoran warships in less than 20 minutes. The Kethvoran had come to Sol System expecting easy prey. They had found something else entirely. They had found predators. And now Verkan had to explain to his people that the galaxy was not what they had believed. There was a species out there that had hidden its true nature for half a century. A species that had watched and waited and built in secret while everyone else assumed. They were harmless. The humans were not prey. The humans had never been prey, and the galaxy was about to learn that the hard way. Verkin began writing his report. He knew it would change everything. He knew that when the Dominion leadership read his words, the entire strategy would have to be reconsidered. The easy conquest they had planned would not be easy at all. But someone had to tell them the truth. The humans were coming, and the galaxy was not ready. The Grand Chamber had never been so silent. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the room, exactly where she had stood 2 days ago when the Council had laughed at humanity's petition for membership. The same 12 elder species looked down at her from their floating platforms. But everything else had changed. There was no laughter now. There was no contempt. There was only fear. Councillor Zdethric was the first to speak. His voice was not steady. Ambassador Vasquez, we have all seen the recordings from the Sol System engagement. We require an explanation. What would you like me to explain, Councillor? Everything. Zdethric slammed one of his fists against his platform's railing. For 50 years, we have received reports about humanity's development. For 50 years, we have been told that your species possessed minimal military capability. 40 patrol ships, obsolete weapons, primitive engines. His eyes were wide with something that looked very much like panic. Where did you hide for 1,000 warships? How did you develop weapons that cut through shields like paper? How is any of this possible? Elena let the silence stretch for a moment. She wanted them to feel it. She wanted them to understand that the balance of power in this room had fundamentally shifted. For 50 years, she said finally, humanity observed how the Galactic Council treats younger species. We watched the Veluxi subsume the Krath into their territory as a protectorate. We saw the Luminari absorb the Draven Collective through economic dependency. We documented 17 cases of elder species eliminating potential rivals. Before they could become threats, she paused to let those words sink in. We learned from your example, Councillors. You taught us that the galaxy respects only one thing, power. So we built power. We built it quietly. We built it carefully. And we made absolutely certain that no one would know about it until we were ready. Councillor Vethan's crystalline form flickered with agitated light. You deceived us. You deliberately provided false information to the Council. We provided the information you wanted to see. Elena shrugged. You wanted to believe we were weak. You wanted to believe we were harmless. We simply confirmed your expectations. Was that deception? Or were you simply seeing what you wished to see? This is outrageous, shouted the Orvani ambassador. You have violated the fundamental trust that underlies galactic cooperation. Trust. Elena allowed a small smile to cross her face. 2 days ago, when the Kethvoran announced they were coming for Earth, how many Council species offered to help us? How many of you sent ships to defend a fellow member of galactic civilization? Silence. None, Elena continued. Not one. You sent messages of condolence. You expressed sympathy for our impending extinction. And then you pulled your fleets back to protect your own systems and waited for us to die. More silence. Several councillors looked away, unable to meet her eyes. We did not build our secret fleet because we wanted to conquer the galaxy, councillors. We built it because we knew that when trouble came, we would be alone. And we were right. The Veluxi moderator, ancient and gray, leaned forward on his platform. Ambassador Vasquez, regardless of past grievances, we now face a mutual threat. The Kethvoran Dominion has not abandoned their conquest. Their main fleet of 10,000 warships is advancing toward Council space. Even with your revealed capabilities, humanity cannot defeat such a force alone. No, Elena agreed. We cannot, then we must work together. A combined fleet, a united response. The moderator spread his withered hands. Surely you understand this. I understand it perfectly. The question is whether you do. Elena walked in a slow circle, making eye contact with each councillor in turn. For 50 years, you treated humanity like a minor inconvenience. You blocked our trade proposals. You denied us access to advanced technologies. You restricted our colonization rights. You made us beg for every small privilege while you divided the galaxy among yourselves. She stopped and faced them directly. Now you need us. Now you want our ships and our weapons and our soldiers to save your civilizations. And I am supposed to simply agree, as if nothing happened. As if the past 50 years were just a misunderstanding, Zethric leaned forward. "What do you want, Ambassador?" "I want change. Real change. Not promises that will be forgotten once the danger passes." Elena's voice hardened. "I want the tier system abolished. No more elder species and lesser species. Every civilization gets an equal vote, regardless of age or military power." "That would destroy the current order," Vithan protested. "Good. The current order was designed to keep species like humanity under your control forever. It ends now. What else?" Zethric asked quietly. "Open access to all technologies currently restricted to elder species. Free colonization rights in unoccupied space. An end to economic practices designed to create dependency." Elena paused. "And formal recognition that humanity's petition for membership was denied through prejudice, rather than legitimate criteria. You're demanding everything," the Orvani ambassador said. "I'm demanding fairness. I'm demanding that the next young species to join galactic civilization doesn't have to spend 50 years building a secret fleet just to be treated with basic respect." Elena looked round the chamber. "These are our terms. Accept them, and humanity will fight beside you against the Kethvoran. Refuse them, and you can face the Dominion alone." The councillors looked at each other. Elena could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Pride warred with survival. Old prejudices clashed with new realities. The entire foundation of their carefully maintained hierarchy was crumbling, and they did not know how to stop it. Finally, Zethric spoke. "The council will need to discuss your terms privately. You have 1 hour." Elena turned toward the exit. "After that, I have a fleet to coordinate. With or without your participation." She walked out of the chamber without looking back. In the corridor, David Chen fell into step beside her, his expression carefully neutral. "Do you think they'll agree?" he asked. "They have no choice. They know it, I know it. The only question is whether they can admit it to themselves before time runs out." They walked in silence for a moment. "Some of them are going to hate us for this," David said. "Even if we save their civilizations, they're going to remember that we forced these concessions. Let them hate us." Elena's voice was tired but determined. "As long as they respect us. As long as the next humanity doesn't have to hide for half a century just to survive." Her communicator chimed. She glanced at it and saw a priority message from Admiral Concuil. The human fleet was in position. The combined force was ready to move as soon as the council made their decision. "Whatever happens next," Elena said, "the galaxy will never be the same. That's something, at least." 47 minutes later, Councillor Zethric contacted her personally. His voice was flat, drained of its former arrogance. "The council accepts your terms, Ambassador Vasquez. All of them. We will formalize the agreements after the current crisis is resolved." A wise decision. "Councillor, was it?" Zethric paused. "Ambassador, I find myself in an unusual position. For 50 years, I believed I understood humanity. I believed you were exactly what you appeared to be. Now I discover that everything I thought I knew was a carefully constructed lie. Not a lie. Councillor, a survival strategy. One that your own behavior made necessary." Perhaps. Another pause. "I must ask you something honestly. Now that you have revealed your true capabilities, now that you have forced these concessions from us, what is to stop humanity from simply taking what you want? Your fleet could probably defeat the Kethvoran and then turn on the council. You could become exactly what you claim to oppose." Elena considered the question carefully. It deserved a careful answer. "Nothing stops us, Councillor. Nothing except our own choice. We could conquer. We could dominate. We could become another Kethvoran dominion, ruling through fear and force." She paused. "But that is not who we are. That is not what we built our fleet to do. Then what did you build it for? Defense, protection, the ability to stand as equals rather than subjects." Elena's voice softened slightly. "Councillor, humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We want to live in it, freely and safely, alongside other species who treat us with basic respect. That is all we have ever wanted, and we denied you that for 50 years. Yes, you did." Silence stretched between them. When Zethric spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been shame. "Then perhaps we deserve what is coming. Perhaps we deserve to face the Kethvoran alone. Perhaps. But humanity does not believe in giving people what they deserve, Counselor. We believe in giving them a chance to do better. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Consider this your chance. She ended the communication and looked at David. Get me a secure channel to Admiral Concuil. We have a war to coordinate. The next phase was about to begin. Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the UES Constellation and watched the combined fleet take shape around him. 4,000 human warships formed the core of the formation. Around them, spreading outward like the petals of a deadly flower, came the vessels of the Council species. 15,000 ships from the Vorati, 10,000 from the Kethmari, 8,000 from the Luminari. The list went on. Every elder species had committed forces to the Alliance. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, and James Okonkwo was responsible for leading it. Admiral, reported his tactical officer, all fleet commanders have confirmed their positions. We are ready to proceed to the Varanthos threshold. Thank you, Commander. James turned to the strategic display that dominated the center of his bridge. The threshold was a natural choke point in hyperspace, a region where the strange physics of faster-than-light travel forced ships through a narrow corridor. It was the perfect place to meet the Kethvoran advance. It was also a terrible risk. If they lost at the threshold, there would be nothing left between the Dominion and the heart of Council space. Open a channel to all fleet commanders, James ordered. Channel open, Admiral. James looked at the display and thought about what he wanted to say. These officers had never fought alongside humans before. Most of them had never even considered humans as potential military allies. They were following his lead because they had no better option, not because they trusted him. Commanders, he said, in approximately 6 hours, we will engage the Kethvoran Dominion at the Varanthos threshold. 10,000 enemy warships against our combined force of 43,000. On paper, the mathematics favor us. He paused, letting that sink in. But mathematics do not win battles. Coordination wins battles. Trust wins battles. And I know that trust is in short supply right now. He thought about the past 50 years, about all the insults and dismissals his species had endured. Many of you have questions about humanity, about why we hid our true capabilities, about what we intend to do after this war is over. Those are fair questions, and you deserve honest answers. On the display, he could see the icons representing thousands of alien vessels. Their crews were listening, waiting. We hid because we had to. We built in secret because the galaxy gave us no other choice. But we did not build this fleet to conquer. We built it to protect, to ensure that our species would survive. James straightened his shoulders. Today, that mission expands. Today, we fight not just for humanity, but for everyone. For every species that the Kethvoran would enslave. For every world they would burn. He felt the weight of command pressing down on him. So many lives depending on his decisions. So many chances for everything to go wrong. I will not pretend that we are friends. I will not pretend that the past can be forgotten. But I will tell you this, when you fight beside human ships today, we will not abandon you. We will not retreat while you are still engaged. We will not sacrifice your people to save our own. His voice hardened with conviction. That is not who we are. That is not what we do. He ended the transmission and turned to his executive officer. Status of human ground forces. All Marine units are loaded and ready, Admiral. Drop ships standing by. Good. The Kethvoran like to board vessels during combat. Let them try it against human Marines. The next several hours passed in tense preparation. James reviewed battle plans with his senior officers. He studied intelligence reports on Kethvoran tactics. He spoke privately with several Council fleet commanders, building what fragile connections he could before the fighting started. And through it all, he tried not to think about Earth, about his wife and children waiting back home, about all the people who were counting on him to win this battle and end this threat forever. When the fleet finally reached the Varanthos threshold, the Kethvoran were waiting. James looked at the enemy formation on his display and felt his stomach tighten. 10,000 warships, arranged in a massive crescent designed to sweep around and envelop any opposing force. At the center of the crescent sat the Dominion flagship, a vessel so large that it dwarfed everything else in the battle space. "We are being hailed," reported his communications officer. "Put it through," A Kethvoran face appeared on screen, scarred and weathered, with eyes that held no mercy and no doubt. This was Supreme Commander Vethkal, leader of the entire Dominion military. Human Admiral, Vethkal said, his translated voice carrying contempt. You destroyed my vanguard fleet. You killed good warriors. For that, I will personally ensure that Earth burns slowly. Your vanguard underestimated us. James replied calmly, will you make the same mistake? Mistake. Vethkal laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. I see your combined fleet. I see council species hiding behind human ships because they are too frightened to lead the attack themselves. You are not a unified force. You are a collection of cowards and pretenders, held together by desperation. And yet here we stand, between you and everything you want to conquer. For the moment, Vethkal leaned forward. I offer you one chance, human. Surrender now. Order your ships to stand down. I will spare Earth if you do. I will only take half your population as slaves instead of all of them. James felt something cold settle into his chest. It was not fear. It was something else. Something harder. No, he said simply. Then you doom your species to extinction. Maybe, or maybe you doom yours. James smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. I guess we'll find out. He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. All ships, advance to engagement range. Human vessels will form the spearhead. We break through their center and split their formation. Admiral, said one of his subordinates quietly, that will put us in the heaviest fighting. I know. That's the point. James looked around his bridge at the men and women who had trained for this moment. Their entire careers. The council species are watching. They need to see what humanity does when the stakes are highest. They need to know that we will take the hardest path if that's what victory requires. The fleet began to move. The Battle of Varantho's threshold started with a barrage of fire that turned space itself into a storm of energy and destruction. Human ships pushed forward through the chaos, their advanced shields absorbing punishment that would have destroyed council vessels. Behind them, the rest of the Allied fleet followed, pouring their own firepower into the Kethvoran formation. James watched the tactical display as the lines of battle shifted and flowed. Ships died by the dozens, then by the hundreds. The Kethvoran fought with savage determination, pressing their numerical advantage wherever they could find a weakness. But the human spearhead held. It pushed deeper into the enemy formation, drawing more and more Kethvoran ships toward it, creating openings that the council fleets exploited. The battle plan was working, and then the Dominion flagship moved. The massive vessel broke from its position at the center of the Kethvoran line and accelerated toward the human formation. Its weapons were enormous, designed to crack planets and burn continents. A single hit from those weapons could destroy any ship in the Allied fleet. It's targeting us, reported the tactical officer. Coming straight for the Constellation. James nodded slowly. Of course it is. Supreme Commander Vethkal wants to kill me personally. He wants to prove that destroying our vanguard was a fluke. Orders, Admiral? James looked at the flagship on his display. It was the most powerful vessel either side had brought to this battle. Its destruction would shatter Kethvoran morale. Its survival would allow them to rally and potentially turn the tide. Everything came down to this moment. All human ships, focus fire on the flagship. Ignore everything else. We bring that monster down or we die trying. 4,000 human warships turned their weapons toward a single target. The barrage that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Beams of energy and waves of missiles slammed into the flagship's shields, wearing them down layer by layer. The flagship fired back. One human cruiser vanished in a flash of light. Then another. Then 3 more. James gripped the arms of his command chair and watched his people die. He watched the flagship's shields flicker and fail. He watched human weapons tear into its hull. And finally, he watched it break apart in an explosion that briefly outshone the nearby sun. Supreme Commander Vethkal died in that explosion. The Kethvoran fleet, leaderless and confused, began to fall apart. Ships that had been fighting with furious determination suddenly lost their coordination. Some tried to retreat. Others continued to fight, but without purpose or direction. The Allied fleet pressed its advantage. By the time the battle ended, The Kethvoran Dominion had lost over 7,000 ships. The remainder fled into hyperspace, scattered and broken. Admiral James O. Concuil looked at the tactical display one final time. It showed the debris of the greatest space battle in galactic history, spreading slowly through the void. Human ships, Council ships, Kethvoran ships, all mixed together in death. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. "Open a channel to all surviving vessels," he ordered. "Allied fleet, this is Admiral Concuil. The battle is over. The Dominion has been broken." He paused, thinking about all the lives that had been lost. "We fought as one today. We bled as one. Whatever comes next, let us remember that." He ended the transmission and allowed himself to feel. 3 months after the Battle of Varantho's threshold, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors of the rebuilt Council station, nodding to the various alien diplomats who passed her. Their greetings were different now. Where once they had ignored her or offered only the most basic acknowledgement, they now stopped to show respect. Some even appeared genuinely pleased to see her. It was a strange feeling, this new reality. After 50 years of being dismissed, humanity had suddenly become the most important species in the galaxy. The Grand Chamber had been redesigned. The floating platforms no longer arranged themselves by species seniority. Instead, all delegations now sat at the same level, around a circular table that had no head position. It was a small change with enormous symbolic importance. Elena took her seat and waited for the session to begin. The reformed Galactic Council now included over 40 species, not just the original 12. Younger civilizations that had previously been denied membership were finally given a voice. Some of them had been waiting even longer than humanity. Councillor Etheric called the meeting to order. He looked older somehow, as if the past months had aged him significantly. Perhaps they had. His entire understanding of the galaxy had been shattered, and he was still trying to piece together a new one. "We gather today to formalize the final provisions of the Varantho's Accord," Etheric announced. "Before we proceed, I wish to acknowledge the species who made this moment possible." He turned to look directly at Elena. "When humanity first joined the galactic community, we called them weak. We called them primitive. We excluded them from our councils and denied them the opportunities we gave to others. We believed we knew what they were." He paused, and something that might have been shame crossed his face. "We were wrong." The chamber was silent. At the Battle of Varantho's threshold, human ships led the assault against the Dominion flagship. Human soldiers boarded enemy vessels when all seemed lost. Human commanders coordinated our chaotic alliance into a unified fighting force. Etheric took a deep breath. They did not have to do any of this. After how we treated them, they would have been justified in letting us face the Kethvoran alone. Elena remembered the debate that had raged across human space during those dark hours. So many voices had argued for staying out of the fight. So many people had wanted to let the elder species suffer the consequences of their arrogance. But humanity chose differently, Etheric continued. They chose to fight beside us. They chose to die beside us. And when victory was achieved, they did not use their power to dominate or punish. They asked only for fairness. He looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "I have spent many nights thinking about what this means. What kind of species builds a secret fleet capable of conquering the galaxy, and then uses it only for defense? What kind of species saves those who wronged them and asks for nothing but equality in return?" Elena knew the answer, but she let Etheric find it himself. "It means that we were not just wrong about human capabilities," Etheric said slowly. "We were wrong about human character. We judged them by our own standards, assumed they would behave as we would have behaved in their position. We expected ambition and conquest and revenge. Instead, we received mercy." The word hung in the air. "The Varantho's Accord establishes a new galactic order," Etheric continued, his voice growing stronger. "Equal representation for all species, open access to technologies, fair trade practices, an end to the hierarchies that divided us for so long. But these are just words on documents. They mean nothing without the commitment to honor them." He looked at Elena one more time. "Humanity has shown us what that commitment looks like. Now it falls to the rest of us to prove that we can learn from their example." The formal proceedings continued for several hours. Documents were signed. Protocols were established. The bureaucratic machinery of galactic governance ground forward, transforming revolutionary principles into mundane regulations. When it was finally over, Elena stepped outside the chamber and found David Chen waiting for her. He was smiling, which was unusual for him. "Well," he said, "we did it. Equal membership, fair treatment, everything we spent 50 years working toward, everything and more." Elena looked up at the stars visible through the station's observation window. "I keep waiting to wake up and discover this was all a dream. It's not a dream. It's the result of 5 decades of planning and patience and very careful deception." David's smile faded slightly. "Do you think they'll actually follow through? The elder species, I mean. Do you think they'll honor these agreements?" Elena considered the question. It was the same question she had been asking herself since the battle ended. "Some will," she said finally. "Some won't. That's the nature of politics and species and the complicated mess of galactic civilization." She paused. "But the important thing is that we've changed the conversation. We've proven that younger species don't have to accept whatever scraps the elders choose to give them. We've shown that a different approach is possible, and if someone else tries what we did, hides their capabilities until they're strong enough to challenge the established order, then hopefully we'll be wise enough to welcome them as equals before it comes to that." Elena smiled. The whole point was to create a galaxy where no one has to build a secret fleet, just to be treated with basic dignity. If we succeed at that, then it won't matter if another species hides their strength. They won't need to. They walked together toward the human delegation's quarters. Along the way, they passed representatives from a dozen different species. A Kethmari ambassador actually stopped to introduce himself and express appreciation for humanity's role in the war. A young Luminari diplomat asked if she could arrange a cultural exchange program with Earth. This was the new normal. It would take time to feel real. When they reached the quarters, Elena found a message waiting from Earth. Admiral Concuil had returned home and was beginning the process of integrating the revealed fleet into open operations. There was no more need for secrecy, no more need to hide. She thought about all the engineers and scientists and soldiers who had spent their careers building something that no one outside a select circle even knew existed. Generations of humans had contributed to the secret fleet, knowing that they might never see the fruits of their labor. They had trusted that someday, somehow, their work would matter. They had been right. Another message arrived, this one from Councillor Zethric. It was brief. "Ambassador, I would welcome the opportunity to speak privately at your convenience. Not about politics. I simply wish to understand." Elena read the message twice. Then she composed a response, accepting the invitation. This was how change happened, she realized. Not just in grand treaties and formal accords, but in small conversations. In the willingness to reach across old divides and actually listen. In the recognition that understanding was more valuable than victory. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it was capable of in war. Now came the harder task of showing what it was capable of in peace. Elena looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Kethvoran Dominion were regrouping. Other threats would emerge eventually. The galaxy would face new challenges, new crises, new moments where everything hung in the balance. But humanity would not face them alone. Not anymore. They had earned their place among the stars. They had proven their worth in the fire of battle and the patience of diplomacy. They had transformed from a species that everyone dismissed into one that everyone respected. And most importantly, they had done it without becoming the monsters they had been forced to defend against. That, Elena thought, was the real victory. Not the battle, not the treaty, but the choice to remain true to themselves even when power offered darker options. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. Now it was learning something more important. It was learning to trust them. Elena smiled and began planning for tomorrow. There was still so much work to do, so many bridges to build, so many old wounds to heal. But for the first time in 50 years, she was optimistic about the future. Humanity had finally come home to the stars, and the stars would never be the same.